Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Överschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Hello, and welcome to Over Underrated. It's me, your co-host Fran, and today I'm backstage at TFI Friday. It's 1995, and we're recording our Birmingham special with our special guest Tim Colledge, who's a podcaster and a PT, and we get to chat about ocean colour scene and the streets. But as per usual, we make playlists of our 10 most overrated tracks and underrated tracks, and then we discuss and have a lovely time. So, on with the show, and here's Babs.
So, welcome to another episode of Over Underrated. And once again, we have gone around the UK for today's theme, Birmingham.
And today, guys, we have a special guest all the way from Abu Dhabi, Tim Colledge. Hi, Tim, and tell us about yourself.
How are you doing? Yes, I am from Abu Dhabi, and I'm here to I'm a trainer out here in Abu Dhabi, doing what a lot of expats do, actually surviving lockdown better than a few other places around the world. So quite grateful to be here at the moment. Yes, not far from Dubai, which is up the road, about an hour away. And just getting on with 2021. Hopefully, it's going to be better than the previous year.
Has there been an influx of tourists recently? I keep seeing people from Britain in those parts.
Yeah, and as a result, our COVID cases have gone through the roof in the last week. So they've just closed the corridor between Abu Dhabi and the UAE and the UK, just because there was cases have gone through the roof. I think it was, they'd probably got a bit of a special relationship from a tourist point of view and whatever, but it wasn't good from our standpoint. We're better here in Abu Dhabi because obviously we don't get the tourists that Dubai get, but it still has affected how many cases we've had, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine went to Dubai over Christmas to visit one of her best friends there. And the way she described it is, it's almost normal. You just have to wear masks everywhere. And she told me she even went to a concert she couldn't dance, you couldn't move. But I was like, I can only imagine the joy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty normal. It is. I mean, we're lucky. It's not that we're ignoring the whole thing, but everybody's pretty obedient when it comes to wearing masks and stuff. And whatever your opinions on that, I don't care. But it just seems to have worked for us.
Yeah, I guess you get less conspiracy theorists over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the case, mate. Yeah.
And you've got your own podcast as well, Tim?
Yes, I've got a podcast called Coffee with Coaches, which I think it got rebranded early last year as because I realised that I just wanted to chat with other coaches. I'm a fitness trainer. I've been a fitness trainer for 17 years, and I've got a business out here in Abu Dhabi. And previously, it was called Lifting Weights and Protein Shakes or something like that. And I'd just done a few, and when it came to lockdown, I needed something to do. I've got trainers around the world that I've worked with, and I think I must have put about 40 episodes out last year, maybe 30 episodes. So yeah, Coffee with Coaches, look it up. We've had a couple of comedians from the UK on, Carl Donnelly and Julian Dean, which are sort of, the slant was that they're vegan, so let's have a chat about nutrition, and Julian likes his training and stuff as well. They were kind enough to come on, and a couple of big names within fitness, really, like David Jackson, who runs a company in the UK called School of Calisthenics. If anyone hears this and those names ring a bell, then go and give it a listen.
Sounds cool. But as we're a music podcast, let's take it over to music. And do you ever get to see any live bands on a part of the world?
Pandemic or pre-pandemic?
Pre-pandemic.
Oh, pre-pandemic life was really good. Yeah. I mean, I've been here a long time now. And when I do go home, if I'm home, I do try and catch comedy and comedians. Comedy and music. But we get the F1 here every year. The F1 always brings out 3 big bands. So there's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday is usually the biggest. So I've seen The Who, I've seen Blur, I've seen Prodigy. I've seen, some great bands. I saw band in question, Ocean Colour Scene, up in Dubai about 2 years ago, I think it was. And I think quite a few of the old sort of the older bands that aren't maybe getting followed around in the street back home and aren't getting the press and the coverage that the likes of Oasis and Blur and whoever else would. Those bands from the 90s and the early 90s come out, and because they know there's a bunch of old expats out here that would love to see them play.
I mean, I had no idea that you get so many bands over there. So that's pretty cool. So in that case, you have no excuse to not be into music still, Tim. So
no, exactly. Still loving it.
What's your history of Ocean Colour Scene? How did you discover them?
Ocean Colour Scene. Now, I remember their album from '96, which was being advertised on the back of Q magazine, which I think's just finished, right? Q magazine went out last year or something. Yeah, it's a shame. And it was that at my dad's. My dad used to play squash in a basically that had a pub attached to it, and I'd just run around this pub, and this magazine was there, and I'd be so bored whilst my dad was spending 2 hours playing squash, and the album Marching Already was advertised on the back, and I don't know what it was about that marketing, I don't know what it was about that magazine, but it was the first album I personally remember buying. I think I'd had shit bought for me that I'd request. I'm not going to say that I didn't request shit music. I was a kid, not really knowing what to ask for, but I think I got PJ and Duncan's like album and stuff like that. No shame.
I own it. I own Psych by PJ and Duncan. It's proper rap, guys.
This is a guilty pleasure free zone, Tim. Don't worry about it.
All right, okay.
You can talk openly about everything. even if you love the girls, it's okay.
Yeah, I'd had that bought for me. I'm not saying I didn't request it, but that was in my locker. And then I saw this advert, and I went and bought with a job that I had restringing tennis rackets and squash rackets for the same club. And I went and bought this album. And I remember just thinking why it was not loaded at all. There was 2 songs on it that I liked that I used to skip between. As I remember, it was track 4 and 7 or somewhere thereabouts. And it took, and all I listened to was those 2 tracks. That was it. And then I slowly, you might let it continue playing after one track because it was a CD. You wouldn't put it on repeat or whatever. And then slowly but surely, I started to like the other tracks on the album. And then I just thought it was the greatest thing ever, and nothing else really got a play. It wasn't like you could make playlists back then, right? Unless you was recording to tape or something. I was listening to this album back to back, and I thought it was one of the best things ever. Then I started to realise that they made the music for what I thought was a great program at the time, TFI Friday.
And there's no one in the UK who can hear the Riverboat song without thinking of TFI Friday.
No, exactly.
I did not know that was Ocean Colour Scene. I thought it was the TFI Friday song, and I was extremely surprised when I put it on. I was like, oh, this is an actual full song by an actual band. Right. Yeah. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Would you not say that the cover of Marching Already is one of the worst album covers of the 90s? Just
is 4 men
in the garden. Just 4 guys in the garden.
Oh, I've got it here. Yes, you're right. Yeah, that is pretty amateur. They've had a bad photo shoot there, but it was the 90s. They might have had a bad night the day before. They might have had a lot of narcotics. I don't know.
Fun fact, guys: this album took "Be Here Now" off number 1.
Did it really?
It's their only number 1 album, yeah, and it jumped over Oasis, who gave them help in their career, I believe. I was 17 when that album came out, so I do remember it massively. And I remember is it Mosley? I can't even pronounce the name of that album.
Mosley Shoals.
Yeah. That's a recording studio, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I remember everyone at school having that album because of a certain song on there, which I'm sure we're going to mention in a minute.
Underrated.
So Tim has kindly made us a 10-track Spotify playlist to prove to the world why ocean colour scenes are criminally underrated. And we're starting off with This Day Should Last Forever. So, Tim, tell us about the song and why you
Well,
chose it.
it's the playlist in no particular order, and I had a bit of a phase of going back through sort of 90s indie or sort of Britpop and the fringes of Britpop about a year or two ago. When I did see them live, and This Day Should Last Forever came out. On what album was that? Yeah, that
A
album.
hyperactive workout for the Flying Squad, 2005.
Great name for an album.
Yeah.
Great name for an album. And I didn't get too deep into that album, but that song, since they played it live a couple of years ago, I just thought it was great. We'd had a day. It was a sort of an early evening gig, and I'd had a day in a beer garden, and they played This Day Should Last Forever, and I thought, well, what lyrics? I mean, that is one. I won't have it as a criticism of them. It is that their lyrics are pretty obvious, shall we say? Like some of their lyrics are very blatantly, they don't. There's nothing cryptic about what they're saying in their lyrics, but I loved it. I'm not going to have that leveled at them as a criticism, by the way. Before you start to,
I love the combativeness already.
Are we assuming that Simon Fowler is the lyricist, is he, or
of that one,
or of all the songs? I don't know how it works.
I think more so. I looked at a few of the credits on writing today, and Steve Craddock's always on there, and even the drummer was on a few of them. But they tend to just list it. They're all listed as writers, so it probably is mainly Fowler, but Steve Craddock's listed on them as well.
Are you a fan of the Wonder Stuff, Tim?
Where did I hear that? You know what? Spotify is a genius. Like they've sent me Size of a Cow by the Wonder Stuff this week for the first time ever. I was like, I'd not put the band to the song, but now I'm a fan because of that song.
Because as soon as I heard this and heard the violins and the melody, I thought this sounds like the Wonder Stuff to me.
Yeah, but is there any crossover in musicians at all though? Because they must have been.
No. Well, I mean, I guess the Wonder Stuff are from Wolverhampton, so the part of Midland Sea, and I guess Ocean Colour Scene did start off, didn't they, early on, like in 1990. So I don't know if they ever make it across there. But yeah, I just as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh, this is the Ocean Colour Scene does the Wonder Stuff. Not expected.
Yeah, brilliant. Another brilliant band.
The Wonder Stuff are one of those bands I've heard of, but wouldn't know anything about them. So Fran, you'll have to send me something. I wanted to check, Tim, like, how old are you? How old were you when you saw that advert on the back of Q magazine? Just because I was very young when this was coming out, and I was still in my big pop smash hits, Top of the Pops is everything. So Ocean Colour Scene, I knew a few things, but not that much. So yeah, how about you?
It was, I'd have been 13, I think. I'm 37.
Perfect age.
So
perfect age for getting into Britpop.
Just about right. And I was railing against Oasis and Blur a little bit because my mates were shoving it in my face. So I wanted to look for other stuff. So I went completely rogue and went all the way to Birmingham from Manchester and found a band that I thought no one else would be, like a bit. You know what I mean? One of those being a bit hipster by getting into a band that I thought no one had heard of, and actually turned out everybody had heard of them as well.
And that's precisely why I wanted to ask what age you were, because at 13, my gateway bands into that were Radiohead and Muse, away from the pop that I was into. Yeah, I was just curious. So from the playlist that you sent us, I only knew, I think, three songs, and This Day Should Last Forever. I didn't know. For me personally, Fran knows my taste a bit better. It's a little bit too twee for me. Like, it's a mix between folk and country, and that's not really my vibe. But with this song, as with actually, I think every single song on this playlist, I can really appreciate the musicianship. I think they're all really good musicians and not something I'd ever really thought about. And actually, I think this song, as with any others, it really kind of makes you appreciate how they play the acoustic guitar. So it's not for me, but I do quite like it. I quite like the how good they are as musicians.
There's a BBC Two acoustic set. BBC, I don't know if it's Radio 2. It's definitely on YouTube. An acoustic set of them two, and it would have only been, they'd have been past it and they just went on Radio 2 and played everything acoustic, and it was incredible. I think one of them's on a 12-string guitar.
Yeah, a lot of these tracks you've chosen are the acoustic versions, aren't they, of the bigger songs?
Yeah, I think a few of them have come from that album. And that, I just think that there was after that album that I said I bought just there, I think that's an album with no skippable tracks on it. I mean, that's a big shout, I think, for any album. But I don't skip a track on that album.
We got a lot of tracks from the B-sides album. I think was it 96, maybe 96,
yeah,
97?
Later. It came out straight after the Marching Already, I think it was.
And you've got Outside of a Circle, which is the acoustic version of The Circle, which is one of their bigger hits. And do you know what? I had to double check it because I thought, hang on, I know this song. But then I thought, is this the bigger side? So I had to look, and then realised it was the song I knew. And no, I loved it. I think it sounds better, definitely stripped down. It had more of like a George Harrison sort of feel to it.
Yes, good shout. Very good shout. Yeah. And again, they're not hiding anything in those lyrics there. They're not being cryptic at all. They're pretty much saying exactly, or whoever the writer was of that one, they're saying exactly what they was feeling, which I think at the time I was loving that. I thought it was like my feelings all wrapped up in a song, you know what I mean? But maybe if I'd have been a bit older, I would have totally been like, what on earth,
I'm not worried about bad lyrics. I mean, Babs, you sort of read up a little bit more.
Yeah, I pay attention to lyrics, I think, a bit more than Fran, but also for me, I as long as the music's good, I'm not that bothered about lyrics. For this one, I really liked it, despite it being a quiet song. I think his raspy voice sounds very impassioned, and it makes the song. I had no idea it was the acoustic version of another song, so I'll have to go and check out the original version. So the lyrics didn't bother me for this one, but the one that they did was the next one, which is Profit and Peace, because I really liked the song. I like the weird sound effects and how they harmonize. But I felt like, okay, they want to rail against something, but what the fuck are they railing against? Like, what war? This isn't Iraq here or anything like that. I was thinking, like, it came out in 99. What was going on at that time? I was like, okay, well, there was the Kosovo War, but it was, very vague. And I think, I read that it was, so the drummer used to say there's no profit in peace. Simon Fowler then took that title and wrote the song about the war at the current time, no mention of which one. And the message is saying, because there is no profit in peace, war will not stop. Okay, sure.
I guess they're 2 years ahead of their time, aren't they, basically, guys?
I see this
2001.
I think they was writing for in 96. D-Ream was the political Labour's theme tune, and they was thinking 3 years ahead of that. They was thinking we're gonna have something here. Let's get it, lads. Like we'll definitely get the Labour Party need another theme tune for their next election.
And Babs, you meant to know this. Well, Nats, you were here, but like that became the biggest song in England in that time.
Did it?
In 2001, yeah, everyone was singing at the time.
Oh, that's when I moved to Luxembourg. What a coincidence!
It was like, it's coming. It's the same sort of vibe. Anyway, so we've gone on to the biggest hit of theirs, The Day We Caught the Train. And if you go to a nightclub in the UK, they have to play this after. They basically play like a little indie half hour. When I used to go to, it would be Reef, Place Your Hands, Girls and Boys, Wonderwall, and then The Day We Caught the Train. And this is an acoustic version. Well, it's like a stripped back with a bit of organ on it, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah. So the years they came out, it's not the year is the year that the acoustic album came out, which I think it was on one of their earlier albums, wasn't it? This song, Day We Caught the Train, was it their second? Maybe sure, their bigger album. Yeah. Love it as a track, and you know what? This is one that I think I prefer. And there's a couple that I shouldn't have put the acoustics on. I should have put the originals on, because I've just taken a fitness class and I played a couple of Ocean Colour Scenes originals, and they're not heavy, but they sound a lot heavier than I remember. Now I've been listening to nothing but their acoustic stuff, because I got the wrong side of 35, and I was like, okay, I need to chill out a little bit. I should have put the originals on, because they're a bit more rocky than I remembered.
You know what? I'm glad you put the acoustic version on, because I prefer this to the original. I thought.
Did you?
Yeah, the acoustics really showcase his voice. I didn't realize how good his voice was, to be honest, because there's so much going on instrumentally, especially on the kind of the faster songs where there's the guitar, the bass, and the drum. I mean, they're all really, again, great musicians. So yeah, I'm glad, and I'm also glad because I think the B-side album is called B-sides, C-sides, and Free Rides, which is a great name. So no, good choice.
It is a good album title, right?
It's weird not hearing him going, hey, hey, Hannah, in the chorus. But anyway, I want to stay alive with you. I had never heard of him my entire life, so I don't know if this is a stripped down version or this is an original
It's
song.
not, but the original's not Rocky. I think it just, no, it was either that or they've got a track called Robin Hood. Have I got that right? Which again is very like, it was one of them as a kid that I remember I was always the first one I'd skip, give me the heavier stuff, heavy, but it was either that or this one I was going to put on. And I should have left Robin Hood on. I'm from Nottingham-ish, so I should have left it on, but I didn't. And they have a similar track, this very similar track, a bit more heartfelt, I think.
This is the thing with playlists, isn't it? Like one day will be completely different the next day. It's like how you feel. It's like when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite song by a band?" It's going to change day by day, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and these are bands that because I had the CD, or even in some cases the tape. I think definitely. What's the story was I had it on tape before I had it on anything else. I like listening to the album straight through. There's some little what do they call it, like an interlude between two songs that's 30 seconds long and stuff, and if it's not in between the tracks, it doesn't feel right. I feel like they've missed something. I feel like I hate to hear Hello by that fade on Hello by Oasis. That fade at the end of it, doesn't it go? It goes into something else, and if it doesn't go into something else at the end of that fade, I'm like, that you've ruined my life. I need the next track.
The thing is, I think today you can't ever hear Hello because it samples Gary Glitter.
It does sample Gary Glitter, yeah.
So do you still listen to music as much as you can, listening to the whole album in one go, or?
Yeah, I do actually. It's not out at the minute, but I've got a vinyl. Got a record player because I'm one of those wankers.
And can you buy vinyl in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah. There's I mean, like everything, it's pretty much online, and there's I think because we get there's a big delivery. There's loads of companies that deliver anything to you. So you can set up a Facebook group. If I had extraordinary amount of books for whatever reason or old magazines, I could set up a Facebook group and have somebody come to me and deliver it for very, very cheap. So
I heard about this.
I joined delivery. I joined an audio Facebook group, and I can get some really old vinyl. And people, things seem to have come into this country in the 70s, 60s and 70s by my friends. I mean, I've not been here that long, but I've got friends that grew up here and their parents have lived here forever. And it's like they've been, they bought old classic stuff from the 70s and 80s here, and it's just been looked after and it's stayed here because there wasn't another one to replace it with. Be like, oh, we bought that record player out. The tall standing speakers that you could have as a side table, those kind of things. I've got a friend in Dubai who's got those, and he's like, oh yeah, they were my mum and dad's back in the UK, but we're not going to take them home. No one's prepared to let them die. We're not going to throw them out. So we still got them, and they're brilliant. So, but yeah, that he put me onto the group, and the group can deliver the vinyl anywhere in the UAE, really.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
See, I haven't gone back to vinyl. I have all my 12 inches I bought for like 10p in the 90s, just in some sort of box somewhere. But I guess I tend to listen to music now in my earphones, walking around or in the car. I very rarely would sit down and do the whole motion of putting on an album and just sit there and listening to it.
What's the because I thought of this the other day, what's the last album you remember having a release date and being a thing that you craved and waited for to come out? I mean, I distinctly remember this, and I can't remember anything since it.
Well, I mean, after I worked in HMV, so I was always aware of the music dates. So up until 2012, I'm pretty cool. But since 2012, apart from like my massive core bands, yeah, I mean, I would probably look at Wikipedia. I did that recently to see what albums are out this year, then sort of like make like a mental note. But I think last year I was looking forward to the Killers album. But apart from that, yeah, no, I'm just surprised when I hear something.
Oh, you're much more recent than me then. I mean, I remember, waiting and buying a hard copy of the Arctic Monkeys' first album. So it would have been 2006. And I remember, for a year before it, I'd seen them live in Sheffield. A mate of mine had introduced me to a few other bits. And I was, really waiting. I bought it from like Tesco in my hometown,
That day, I remember working in HMV, and literally every motherfucker in the area was buying an album. It'd be like guys in like a full suit. It'd be kids who are 10 years old. That album, I've never seen anything like it, when literally everyone like suddenly had to have an album that day. Is mad.
Yeah, just to say quickly, I've never been a vinyl person. I have inherited all of my mum's vinyls, including Dark Side of the Moon with the original posters, which, I feel like if I ever, go broke, selling that. But I've always been a CD person, and it really makes me sad that a lot of artists at the moment, if they release something physically, they release it only on vinyl and not on CD. So I think, I don't know if 2021 is going to be the year, but probably 2022, I'm going to have to give in and do that. I consciously in 2020 spent way more listening to albums from beginning to the end, and that really showed in my Spotify 2020 playlist. It was full of album tracks like I'd never seen before. To talk about what albums I'm excited about, I think I'm still excited about some albums today. I'm a big fan of Tom Beck, and so when the news dropped that he kind of surprisingly was going to release an album, I was there kind of refreshing social media, waiting to find out. But I think, unless you're a big star like Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift, before bands and record labels would really tease a release for months on end, and they don't really do that now. Like, it's much more common to just kind of drop stuff. So while I think part of it is because we're older and music is so much more consumable now, I think it is also that because of that, bands aren't teasing things so much, gearing things up so much.
Yeah, I remember when like Radiohead dropped their In Rainbows. Yeah. It was like, oh wow, oh my god, like, can this happen? Can a band just drop an album like instantly? Being a big shock. But anyway, should we back to the playlist, guys? So we have your first live outing with the Beatles cover of Day Tripper, and I believe this is live with the Gallagher brothers.
Yeah, I got it the wrong way round for years. I thought the Gallagher brothers bought on Ocean Colour Scene, but it's not. It's the other way around.
I think back in the day, Ocean Colour Scene was supporting Oasis a lot, so I guess it was like a switch around for once.
Yeah, it was. And there's a bit of them chatting at the beginning of that track. I just think that's a great collaboration for a start. I mean, two 90s big hitters, and I'll tell you. I mean, sorry to come off of the track, but I mean, Oasis and Ocean Colour Scene covering the Beatles, it doesn't get much bigger than that. I mean, it's a bit
very Britpop,
yeah, exactly. But what I was going to say was, I didn't get into it, is that at the time, these, if they'd have been around, 5 years later, they'd have been up against a lot less competition. I mean, at the time, you had the Verve, you had Blur, you had Oasis, and go a bit further back. They probably it was a tough market at the time. But if you put them up against the likes of, I mean, who was around 5 years later, like
Keen, Embrace, Travis,
the Fratellis, and that sort of stuff. That was a weak sort of, I thought, a weak 5 year period of music, personally. Because
those bands were basically just watered down versions of what they heard previously, and there's so many bands in the 90s who did like get swept under the carpet, like Gene, Shed 7,
famously.
And if they came out in a different era, they would be massive. But yeah, you're right. There's just too many good things happening at the same time, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a big decade, definitely. Maybe a bit longer than a decade. I mean, In Spiral Carpets, early 90s, was that late 80s? I mean, not these are bands that I'm not pretending these are that I'm well into them or anything. I'm not that cool, but I know that they were amazing bands, and if been friends of mine followed these guys around.
The only thing I say about this Day Tripper version is that I think Liam Gallagher comes out better as a vocalist. I think Simon sort of like bellows it a little bit, and Liam sort of like shows off his vocal skills a bit better.
I couldn't find them do it anywhere else. Could you? I had a look for them to do. I had a look on YouTube to see if they did it anywhere other than that one time, and I can't find it.
But before we ever had a camera in the pocket, there wasn't as many recordings back in the 90s, so sadly.
Yeah, I didn't realise Oasis were on here, so I'm glad that I didn't know that, because it would have coloured my judgment, I think. I didn't recognise that. I was kind of intrigued as to why you included this cover, because I thought it was fine. I really enjoyed the guitar solo parts, but I would have actually preferred to see a song with those guitar solo parts as a main thing rather than have it on the Day Tripper cover.
Yeah, there's probably tracks. Are you the technical musician, like
No.
critique?
No.
Oh, aren't you?
No,
Hey, Tim, she's got her own based Instagram, so you know, she changed
where I'm shit, and that's the whole point. No, no, I'm the one who's generally, between Fran and I generally like the heavier music, so I think that's why I dug the guitar solo, and actually, I felt a lot of Beatles coming through. I listened to the playlist in order, and I felt a lot of Beatles coming through before I'd even realised you'd included Day Tripper, and I was like, oh yeah, makes sense. Like, that's definitely an inspiration.
Yeah, and exactly. These bands are obviously, if the likes of the early noughties bands were influenced by the Verve and Oasis, then Verve and Oasis were heavily influenced by we've skipped a generation there. There's the likes of the Jam and the Kinks and the Who that went, I think that there was the middle ground between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and then Oasis and the 90s.
But that was what Britpop was about, wasn't it? It was about, back to champion the British songwriting from the 60s and 70s and stepping away from the American grunge scene, wasn't it? Are you a fan of Paul Weller? Because it's usually a massive link, isn't it, between the bands?
There's does Steve Craddock playing in Weller's band, and the drummer as well played for Weller recently, much more recently, should I say?
And the Beat, which I thought was really interesting. That's a band I've only recently kind of got into, and I was like, he's doing well. Like, that's two decent bands from Birmingham.
I mean, I love Weller. The Jam more so, and even a Style Council for me is some of the better tracks I personally think come from there. But just amazing.
I saw on the same day as Ocean Colour Scene, Paul Weller was headlining a festival in Portsmouth, and Steve Craddock stormed off stage because his guitar wasn't working. And it got all a bit embarrassing. It's like, and then people had sort of film, and so he's going to come back on stage, and he sort of came back eventually. But I watched Paul Weller, and after 7 songs, I realised this is not going to be playing any Jam, and I made a quick exit. It was too strummy dad rock, so I went to see Paloma Faith instead, and had a better time.
Was that a festival? Was it? Yeah,
it was a festival, but don't kill me, Paul Weller fans. But yeah, the Jam I adore, but post Jam's a bit here and there.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. What's Wildwood? He did that as himself, right? Wildwood.
That was like the comeback album after the Style Council kind of died off. It was like, by the way, I'm still good, guys, and then he became like the godfather of Britpop. And then
I still think. I mean, if I was going to say, is he also underrated? Probably not, because I think I'd say you're a couple of years older than me, we missed him at his peak when everybody probably had the haircut. I mean, my dad's been to gigs because he's a fan in the last 10 years, and he said, Tim, like, there's guys my age still rocking the haircut, the whole shebang.
Me, it was a sea of Weller haircuts. It was kind of it was like some sort of cult, and I was like going, are you going to play Start? No, okay. We mentioned this earlier, TFI Friday, but the next track is the infamous River Boat song. And so, Babs, as you are not aware of this, was the 90s anthem. What do you think of this?
So honestly, it started playing and I was like, what? What the fuck? Like, what? This is Ocean Colour Scene. I can't believe it. And then I realised, I actually didn't realise straight away that I knew it from TFI, so I had to go and look it up, and I was like, of course. I remember watching TFI Friday, but 96, I was 9 years old. So, it was like, my parents being pretty liberal, letting me watch it. Absolutely bloody loved it. Loved listening to it all the way through because, like I said, I didn't realize it was a song, and it was really interesting to read that it was influenced by Four Sticks by Led Zeppelin because I didn't quite make that connection.
Really, because I thought Hendrix was an influence.
Well, Wikipedia says Led Zeppelin.
No. I'm not saying when I heard it again.
Listening to it, yeah, I'd have said that. I didn't hear any Zeppelin, but now when you said Hendrix, then I was like, oh yeah, you can imagine that.
Even the chorus, like the deep vocals, like I can imagine Hendrix singing that. So I thought like that's Hendrix. And then we got another big '90s hitter.
Oh yes.
With 100 Mile High City.
Now this was on Now 37, wasn't it? I think that's how I know it. Yeah.
I listened to Steve Craddock on S2E4's podcast today. What's it called? Off the Beaten Track? Is that the podcast?
Yeah.
And he was saying that how they quickly they tried to lose the sort of riffy intros to songs after their first two albums. They was getting renowned for just long riff intros, and
what a shame.
They was doing their best to get rid of it.
And then the career went downhill.
Yeah, and they should have gone back to it. They should don't break it if it's not. Don't fix it if it's not broken. You know. I like it.
Yeah, no. And Oscar's drumming in that song was phenomenal. Mid-song, it sort of like changes gear and sort of goes a bit like everywhere, which I completely forgot about.
A couple of their tracks do that. Outside of the Circles, it sounds like two different songs. There's versions of it that sound totally different.
But I think because what you said, like people just got used to the intros, I probably hadn't finished the song for years because I hear the first 10 seconds, and, oh yeah, it's that, and then move on. I don't forget there's actually a song underneath it. So yeah, I mean, I was actually
knew the Riverboat song, but didn't know I knew it. I knew The Day We Caught the Train, but this song I've been listening to, I feel like, since '97 when it came out, because it was on Now 37. So you know, it would play it on the radio, and it's one of those songs that I actually can't just listen to once. I like it so much that I put it on repeat, and I listened to it probably about 7 times today. And then I went on YouTube and I was like, because I would absolutely love like an 8-minute version of this song where they just go on and on and on, but I couldn't find one. So Tim, if there is one, please send it to me ASAP, because I would gladly listen to this on
I guess it just missed out on the old 12-inch
vinyl. I think it would have been fantastic, like especially with the guitar solo skills. I could really see it extending, and like you say, the drumming is brilliant too.
I'd be surprised if there's not like a longer version out there from a live gig.
Yeah, I saw lots of different live versions of it. The TFI Friday one is actually probably the best because they actually stop and restart, and then Chris Evans is like, oh, they're still carrying on now, okay. But yeah, I think it's a brilliant song. It's one of my Britpop highlights.
TFI Friday does so much of music. Like
did, yeah, amazing.
The bands that played that show, and it's sad. Like I was talking to someone recently, like there's literally no primetime music show in the UK. You've got Jules Holland, and he'll play like maybe one indie band a month. It's quite sad, really.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, when I think of TFI Friday, I think of like Texas, Skunk Anansie, Reef. Like they introduced me to all those sort of bands. And thinking about it, there's a few bands that I could have said were underrated. I mean, Texas were an amazing band, and I mean, Charlene Spiteri.
Good news, Tim. I was listening to the radio yesterday, and guess who's got a new album out next month?
Spiteri.
Yeah, Texas, bring them on.
Yeah. I heard so. Yeah.
I wanted to share with you my favorite Ocean Colour Scene TFI Friday story that I don't know if you know, because I was so obviously I was looking into the band and I hadn't realised that Simon Fowler was gay and kind of tried to keep it a secret, but then was kind of outed, and he's been with his long-term partner for ages. Good on him. I found this hilarious story in the Metro about how Scary Spice outed him on TFI Friday. So I will read this, but kind of briefly. So Ocean Colour Scene Simon Fowler says Mel B tried to pull him until she realised he was gay. The indie rocker met Scary Spice on TFI Friday in the 90s, but her flirting was torpedoed when Ginger Spice Jerry told her he was into guys. An exasperated Mel outed the singer to the audience. Fowler recalled, Mel was like, no way, he's not gay. Jerry said, he is. So Loud Spice goes on the microphone and shouts out, is he gay? That was to the whole bloody audience. I think she got a better deal. She ended up with Eddie Murphy, much better buddy than I could have ever given her. So I really enjoyed that nugget of information.
Jesus.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. I would have loved to have been old enough to go to that live TFI Friday. It must have been like what 95 to 98 sort of era. I'd love to have been at those live recordings, and it was it was on at like 6, so it must have been people must have just finished in the office and gone straight there.
And I tried to bring it back, didn't I, a couple of years ago, but it kind of like
I seem to remember that. Yeah,
I think James Corden. It was
Oh,
a James
God,
Corden
really?
concert.
Wrong choice.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But bringing it back, we've now gone into the noughties with Mechanical Wonder, which I had never heard, and we mentioned the Kinks earlier, and there's definitely a Kinks vibe.
Yeah, it's great
See,
though, isn't it?
I put my least favorite Beatles tribute song. this was my least
Fair
favorite.
enough.
Sorry, Tim, but I put
Fair.
that. It does give variety to the list, but it didn't quite click with me. But please go ahead.
I think it's worked its way onto there because it was an album track that I would have been at a time in my life when I was listening to a lot of them, and I was like, yeah, that's great, I love it, it's going on there. But I take your criticism. Now you've said that, I probably won't be able to listen to it again.
Sorry. I don't want to be the great ruiner. Well, what did you think, Fran?
I think the verse is stronger than the chorus, and like when it started, I thought, oh, this is going to be a cracking chorus, and doesn't really deliver the chorus I was expecting.
Yeah.
I'm into the Kinks and the Beatles, so I'm on board straight away. So I will check this out again. And then we're ending with another track off the album where it started, with Foxy's Folk Faced. No idea what the title means.
Yeah, no, neither. And it's got a bit of it's got a few words on there from a film, I think, or something like that. There's the version I have fades in from a movie or something like that, and I just love the drummer that's just on. I don't know what he's playing there, but I just thought it was a nice. It's folky. I could imagine it being played in a pub, in obviously in Birmingham, just them on an acoustic guitar and a little drum set. I just think it's a nice little. I would have, like I said, this isn't in any order, but I would have always put that as the last track.
What do you think of this song, Babs? Is it too folky for you?
I put it's a fine little folk song, but it doesn't really awaken anything particular in me. But I do want to emphasize that I think the playlist as a whole really made me appreciate the acoustic guitar in a way that I normally, I'd say it's not one of my favorite instruments. But here it really was. So yeah.
So I guess because we kind of knew the band more than you, because it's kind of our era, do you think they deserve more credentials, more fame?
I think they do. There's a lot of variety there. Even me, Fran, quieter acoustic-y songs are not really my jam, and I enjoyed one or two of them quite a lot and saved them, and not just to my chilled playlists that I put on. And yeah, Tim, I absolutely want to question you on indie bangers for fitness playlists, because I have a playlist called Up and Down and all that, where I try to put kind of alternative music for when I do workouts. So I would love to get your views on that later. But yeah, I think it's like we discussed on our Shed 7 episode, right, Fran, where, and Tim brought it up, there's so many similar bands going on that maybe they were given more status and were able to be big because that they were playing the kind of music that was popular at the time. But at the same time, it really, the peak of their fame was the late 90s, and I had no idea they had albums out in 2005 or anything like that.
They've been consistent, haven't they, since the 90s? They've never even had a break.
I
guess the only problem you could say is that they haven't ever tried to change their sound at all, really. Which could have held them back a little bit, But I guess if you're a fan of that music, then yeah, you're going to be a fan for life. But I thought they maybe have tried to experiment a little bit over the years, and I checked out a few songs from each album. I thought, oh yeah, they're still loving the 60s.
Still doing it.
Well, I was listening to The Coral earlier today, and yeah, I just checked. So their debut album came out in 2002. So I guess it was that period, like you guys were saying, in the early 2000s when it kind of started to fade. And I remember when I played The Coral to my mum, who was big into prog rock, and she was basically like, yeah, I fucking heard this before. Like, this is a rip-off of what's happened. Whereas to me, as 2002, I would have been 14, and I was like, oh, this is all very new and exciting. So yeah, I guess it depends what stage of life you're at and how you're going to feel it, because maybe people getting into them now will appreciate all of their output, even if it is all kind of samey.
I mean, yeah, I've seen them live twice, and I would say that they're a good live band, and drummer's brilliant, Simon can sing. I think we just need to have maybe a collaboration with a young cool band or something, just to try and push them back into the mainstream, rather than us doing like folk festivals and dad rock festivals till they retire.
But that's where they're going to get money, right? I mean, again, going back to Shed 7, didn't you say that Shed 7 draw in bigger crowds now than they did before? It wouldn't surprise me if Ocean Colour Scene did, especially given that, they were so big they knocked Oasis off #1.
I guess that's going to be grabbing the tails of Paul Weller. So as long as Paul Weller doesn't retire,
they're all right.
All right. So I would say that I would choose some other bands of era I think are kind of more under the radar, like Gene and Manson, I said earlier, and in a previous episode, Shed 7. But no, I have nothing against Ocean Colour Scene.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
And there we have it. Ocean Colour Scene. Overrated or underrated? What do you think? I kind of think they sort of sit in the middle. They have some decent songs, and maybe they deserve a little bit more respect. So, let's go on to the overrated section with The Streets.
Overrated.
So I thought The Streets, there's a lot of people who do love and hate The Streets. So I thought and also they've also came back, haven't they, since a period of like 9 years away. So I thought, okay, it may hurt myself, but I thought, okay, let's make a playlist with Babs and discuss Mike Skinner's The Streets.
Yeah.
So Babs, what's your previous knowledge of the band?
So I would agree with you that The Streets are overrated. As a general rule, they became big, I guess, in the early 2000s. I remember listening, a lot of people, when I went to uni in 2005, were really into them. I have a great video of one of my housemates doing a parody of Dry Your Eyes, where he makes up a whole story that he's trying to take a piss in a petrol station. It's not for public consumption, but I can send it to you later if you're interested. So
guys, if you ever get any Patreons, you will be able to see this.
My housemate Ben singing The Streets into my broken microphone on a computer. I would agree that The Streets are overrated, because I've never really understood how much of it is Mike Skinner and how much of it is people with Mike Skinner. But it doesn't bother me as much as, I don't know, like Oasis or some of the other bands that I picked as overrated. I was quite neutral about it. So the way that Fran and I did this was we picked 5 songs each. And I think, Fran, you picked 5 songs that you hate, right?
Well, I picked 5 songs over his career that I was aware of.
Okay.
There's one I don't mind.
Okay, one you don't mind. Whereas I picked 3 that I like and 2 that I don't like, because there were 3 of his songs that I liked, and that was it, basically. So that was the easy bit. And then I had to go and basically hate listen to kind of come up with the other 2. But I did fairly easily. I think, like the Fatboy Slim episode, this had the potential to be a playlist that would actually make me like the artist more, because, like I said, I wasn't that bothered about The Streets. So to actually kind of sit down and think about it and go and listen to it, I thought, well, it's probably varied enough that I do like some songs. So yes, I will come to that later. But yeah, Tim, what's your relationship with The Streets?
Well, I think I just did a bit of math. So I'm right in the middle of you two. And for me, they landed, I think, at pretty much just the time where I could go into pubs without bother. I don't think I was quite legally enough to drink, but I wasn't 18, but I must have been 16, 17. And I remember going on nights out and not hearing them. And then the next day being hungover in shitty little pubs, playing pool and watching Soccer Saturday and having that on loop. They're not great, but they are of a time in my life. There's a few things fit, but it, like,
Same.
it's fine. It's fine.
Fit, like, it is probably the one song that I can dig, but mainly because of the riff. But if you start from the top, so like, I'm not exactly into garage. I mean, I wouldn't really. Is it garage? I guess
UK garage, yeah, definitely.
It's not as I guess it's not as dancey, is it? It's more like.
Well, but that's what was interesting.
I'm into UK garage, and I'm offended that you put this anywhere near it.
But I think some songs up, like, well, we can come to it later. But there were 1 or 2 songs where I was like, oh, there are UK garage vibes coming through that I'd never heard before. Any of the songs I knew. But
so yeah, I mean, I think Blind Lights was one of the first tracks I knew. I mean, let's break it down. So it's a simple drum loop, a little bit of piano usually, or some guitar, and then it's Mike just reading out some text messages. and then, if we're lucky, we will then get an R&B singer just singing the chorus of the song or the title of the song. So Blinding Lights has someone going, "Blinding Lights," and then he starts talking about his night out, and that's basically it. I know that's very sweeping, and I remember Chris Moyles having a parody of it, with him just reading a shopping list with a beat in the background, and that kind of is his. That is the Streets to me, and I tried my best to try and find something more. I thought maybe over the past 20 years he's grown as an artist, and yeah, he has added some more textures to his production from the early original Pirate material. But if you're starting off with Dry Your Eyes, I believe is his biggest UK hit. I think unfortunately it was number one.
Unfortunately, so hard.
It did become like the Chav breakup song. I can imagine some kids in some Adidas tracksuits crying, then going home and putting this on whilst having a wank. But I mean, that's my point of view. Babs, are you a fan of Dry Your Eyes? Has this meant something to you?
I'm not a particular fan of Dry Your Eyes. No, like I said, I like the parody my housemate did, but I think Mike Skinner, it is very parodiable, if that's a word, definitely, because it is very heart on his sleeve. And if we're talking about lyrics again, like there is no nuance in I think any of his lyrics. Maybe later on, there's a few songs later on when I did pay attention, I thought, okay, it isn't so much. And I think A Grand Down Come for Free basically was a concept album, right? Like it was a story from beginning to end, so it does tell a whole story, which I guess is interesting, done by that medium. But no, I'm not particularly into it as a song, and it was very overplayed.
Tim, did you have to dry your eyes?
I think I remember the first time I heard it, I think was on GMTV. I'm pretty sure
Nice.
they played it on GMTV, which ruined it for me from the start. I could have heard it in an amazing like underground club or something, and it would have been, like a DJ play, and it would have been a completely different vibe. But when Anthea Turner brings them on at 8 a.m. to play their latest track, no, it does not do it for me one bit.
But you've hit the mainstream when on GMTV. I bet he never, in a million years, in his bedsit in Birmingham on his PC, you would think, hey, one day, guys, Anthea Turner will be dropping a song.
I prefer Lorraine myself, but there we go.
And then Blinding Lights was the first track I remember hearing. How about you, Baz?
So I'd never heard the song, and I loved it. And in a way, you described the song quite well, and that's kind of what I liked about it. It's a very trance-like beat. He's on drugs. That's kind of the point. He's going over and over and over again because it's matching the lyrics of he's on drugs and he's kind of freaking out. I liked this song, and basically any other song that has another vocalist, I realized, because it's just such a nice contrast to his voice. I thought it was simple but effective. And I don't know if you guys know this song, but do you know Martial Law by K Tempest? That's what it reminded me of, because that's about, like, it's also, they're a poet and they're reading poetry lyrics over a Dan Carey beat, and it's set in a nightclub, and it actually did remind me of that, and that's not at all where I expected to go, but it's also kind of very lush and textured. So no, I really like this song, actually.
Sorry, are they of a similar era? Kate Tempest, Mike Skinner, Scroobius Pip, are they all sort of hanging out together at that time?
Kate Tempest is good friends with Scroobius Pip, and I think they've been on a podcast.
I think The Streets was Oh Naughty, Scroobius Pip was 2007, and Kate Tempest is in the last 10 years.
Everybody Down is 2014, so it is much later on.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
but I think some of the rhymes though, guys, is really lazy. I know he can get, people will big him up for talking about real life and talking about things we've all experienced, like not getting signal, etc. But some of the rhymes, I think he rhymes, I'm going there, she's over here, I'm going there, and now she's there. It's like, what? Really? Come on, Mike. So I think he gets bigged up for talking about how it was and how it is, but I find it a bit tedious.
Yeah, I don't mind for this one because, like I said, it's about being on drugs, and he sounds like he's on drugs, so I think it goes pretty well.
Fair enough.
It must have been. I get a feeling it might have been sampled a fair bit, that track. I don't know. I just feel like I've heard it with other stuff. I might be wrong, but that's the one that slips into the garage scene a bit better for me than the other stuff. I mean, what spoken word? I don't know. It doesn't seem. I don't put it alongside some of the other garage stuff from the late 90s, early noughties that I remember fondly.
It's no 21 seconds, is it, Tim?
Oh, true.
No, it's not. It's no 21 seconds. It's no what else from that? Craig David. Yeah, exactly. That sort of come on.
I listened to I watched the documentary on making this new album, and there was a lot of new garage producers saying that he was like their influence. So I can see why maybe that track has been sampled.
I'm looking. It's been sampled. It's been sampled in an XX remix and covered by people that I've not heard of.
What do you guys think of Has It Come to This? Again,
So that was the one where I thought I put UK garage vibes. I mean, he's literally mimicking pirate radio. And yeah, I didn't think this was groundbreaking. I didn't save it to my list, but again, I liked it when the other vocalists came in, and I thought it was interesting, but it didn't really chime with me.
I mean, he does mention the name The Streets, which is kind of that era, isn't it? But late 90s, early 90s is when you have to keep bigging up your own band name in each song so people knew who you were. Little Mix, sadly, haven't done that for me recently. But yeah, for me, a lot of these tracks is repetitive. It's pretty much the same formula repeated, although he does seem to change later on. And I guess we got to Call My Phone, which is from last year, featuring Tame Impala, and is kind of a bit more progress and production values from the early days. What do you think, Babs?
So this one felt like two different songs to me. Like we were saying for Ocean Colour Scene sometimes. It felt like Mike had gone in the studio, Kevin Parker had gone in the studio. They tried to put those two things together. And I wasn't a huge fan of this. But I'm not a huge fan of Tame Impala, to be honest. I quite like a few of their songs. But like 3 or 4 and then that's it. I haven't really properly sat down and listened to an album. So maybe, I'm not the audience for this.
I'm not a big fan of Tame Impala either. I don't get it. And as an indie fan, I keep thinking, like, a bit like Alt J previously, like, what am I missing here? Why is he massive?
I was just going to say, I do like Let It Happen. And my favourite ever cover is this woman called Meg Mac, who covers Let It Happen on, Triple J, the Australian radio station that does those versions. I really recommend checking that out because she takes the ending of the song and makes it the main part of the song. It's really good.
And on this album, this is called None of Us Are Getting Out of Here Live. I think there is a lot of R&B and garage artists like Miss Banks, Slow Tie, Cassian, Daps on the Maps. So I think he basically is teaming up with the people he influenced in the first place a bit more. And then he's got a couple of indie bands, like he's got Rob from The Music, who I think has been his live vocalist.
There's one of a song with him coming up later.
And he did a track with Idols, who are kind of massive in the UK at the moment. What do you think of this, Tim?
You know what? I've just looked at all of the playlist, and I think if you could shuffle those albums around, and I don't think I could tell you what you'd done. Like they'd all fit on. I don't feel like that. You know what I mean? They feel like one song. Like there's all this much of a muchness. It's you couldn't. I had this chat with a friend the other day, and I was saying that hip hop for me, R&B, like Kanye and stuff like that, you couldn't take a Kanye song from last year or the album he brought out in 2019 and slip it onto an album that he brought out in 2002. It'd stand out a million miles, right? If you did, you could shuffle these around all day long, and I wouldn't be able to unshuffle them. Do you know what I mean? They haven't changed. Nothing's moved on. I mean, that latest album, 2020, I see what you're saying. There's a bit more production value, but personally, you've got me on board here with The Streets are well overrated.
So Babs, it's down to you to try and pick him up. So yes, to me, I totally agree with Tim. I was going through the albums and I kept checking to see what year it was, and I was surprised that we're now in 2011 or something, and it's like this doesn't seem to have moved on since the second album at all. And I guess collaborating with modern artists will help his career a little bit more, because it will be passing on The Streets name to a younger audience, but yeah, I've got no idea how popular the streets are right now. Obviously, back in the day, where they were like headlining festivals, and he was a weird band, a bit like the Prodigy, when they could headline dance, hip hop, and indie festivals. And a lot of people into indie like the streets, which I always thought was strange. Because apart from Fit When You Know It, which obviously sounds a bit, like a 1970s glam guitar on it, there's nothing I can see why anyone into indie music would enjoy the streets. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was too old. I mean, I was like mid-20s. I felt too old.
I think it's the authenticity of it, or like the seeming authenticity of it. I mean, I don't know how true to his life it was, but that's what the people I would talk to about it who liked it. That was why, it's like, it's not rocket science to understand the lyrics. Like it's, like I said, it is sort of heartfelt. And yeah, some people are into that.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
It's got a bedsit vibe to it. Like you could, I know, I've been in the odd bedsit for whatever reason, smoky, whatever, after a night out or whatever, and that gets put on, and in that he's put that onto an album. He's put a council flat and drugs and smoky, shitty beer onto an album, and he's encapsulated it, I think. And if you've ever spent any time in those places, whether you remember them fondly or not, I think that album or a couple of his albums will live in you for a long while. But it's not something I'll put on ever again. You know what I mean? I don't need to be reminded of those times.
So how come it didn't inspire you to make an album, Tim? Can we hear the bedsit tapes?
A one bed in Abu Dhabi doesn't really invoke the same emotion.
Hey, give it a go. We can talk about it on the podcast. So later on, when he was rich and successful, was it harder for him to be, keeping it real? I think he does talk about trying to date famous people, doesn't he? So he tries to talk about his life. Yeah. I think he talks about it's hard for him to date like non-famous people.
Really?
He's now Mike Skinner, and how hard it was. And I think he talks about like he did a song about seeing someone famous doing crack. So that was his life. So I wonder if the people who are into his music at the start, what they thought of his albums 4 years down the line when he's singing about being famous, if they were having any empathy at all with it. So I don't know. Maybe that's why he stopped, because maybe he just ran out of modern day stuff he could chat about.
Has that been coined like Bruce Springsteen syndrome yet, where he can't sing about pumping gas anymore because he's been a billionaire for like 30 years now or whatever? Like
exactly. Exactly. I think Steve Martin famously said that he stopped doing stand up because no one wants to hear about how hard it is to find a new maid for your mansion.
Yeah.
Like once you get that much out of touch, you can't really do stand up. So maybe it's a similar thing.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, but I think the same applies also for when very kind of angsty musicians fall in love and get married, and then it's like, well, you're not sad and lonely anymore, are you? So where's that inspiration going to come from?
It'd be interesting to find someone who isn't over 30 and find out what the streets mean to them these days, if they're still because usually when I see festivals, I can work out how popular a band are, depending on where they are on the bill. But since festivals is now destroyed forever or wherever, I can't work out if the streets are now a headline act or they're going to like playing the same level of.
I checked the Spotify statistics. He's got over 1 million monthly listeners, which is quite a bit. But I don't know the demographic breakdown of that.
I don't know if it's all in Britain. Like, are they played at all?
So I would say probably, but it's probably a bit more niche. All the top 5 cities are in the UK, and then Dublin in 5th.
So yes, I mean, I can't imagine anyone in America being down the street.
But I can, because in this day and age, wasn't it Drake that got everyone into grime? And like Americans are unironically into grime, and that's people with like similarly British accents doing rap. And I was thinking while you guys were talking about how, you were saying, is this music made for bedsits? In a way, yes. And I think the equivalent now are the songs that are made for TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I went on it for a bit, and then I was like, this is too much admin for me, and I'm too old. But now artists are making music for TikTok to be played on phones. Like that is the kind of objective for a lot of it. And maybe that wasn't Mike's objective, but it did encapsulate that, you know, it is so clear cut that you can listen to it on a shitty speaker in an apartment with bad acoustics and you can still get something out of it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, like, do the Streets play a massive venue like the O2 if it works?
I think people would go to that. I think people would go to that, yeah. How old they would be, I don't know, but
I've not really seen him live, to be fair. I did see him on an interview saying that his live show was a bit like the Libertines. Sometimes he'd be complete off his face, and he just wanted to see what happened. And that danger was the excitement of seeing the Streets. To me, if I go and see a band and he can't sing because he's off his face, I'm pissed off. But you know, call me no old-fashioned.
Yeah.
That's how I felt the one time I saw the Yeah. She was off her face, and I was like, Karen, come on, get it together.
Really?
Even though she was dressed as a dinosaur, which was quite fun. But yeah, that didn't make up for it, unfortunately.
Which dinosaur, just for podcasters?
Oh, good question. It was a green dinosaur. I'm going to say Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I thought holding a microphone with little hands would be quite. You know...
I think it was Reading 06. So I'm sure I think it was Reading 06. I can look it up and come back to you with the dinosaur.
I'm thinking Madonna headset kind of vibes. So yeah. So what song stood out for you, Babs? I assume you enjoyed track 10 with Rob from.
No, I
Music.
didn't actually. I
Really?
put that in actually to kind of tease you a bit because I know that you like the music.
You did tease me.
Good. But it's interesting because your last pick was The Way of the Dodo, which I didn't realize you'd picked, and then I picked it as a song that I liked, and I was like, oh no, hang on, I've got to pick another one because I didn't like this, which I quite enjoyed because it sounds like an absolute parody. It starts and he's talking about dodos, and you're like, what the fuck's going on? But then once it starts, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'm into this. So the first song that I picked that I liked is Fit But You Know It, because honestly, I don't know if I like it or not. I can't tell you whether I like it or not, but I remember being in school and a friend of mine singing it to me in a very kind of sarcastic way, and I was like, what's she talking about? I have no idea. But yeah, like you said, Tim, you know, I associate memories with it, and I really enjoy this. I went to find it because I remembered this tweet from comedian Lolly Adefope. She tweeted, "Feminism is realizing you're on the girl's side in the song Fit But You Know It," which is 100% true. Like 100% true. Like when you really sit down and think about it, he's just pissed off. He's like, you know, an angry little incel, I think, in this one. But yeah, what do you guys think of that one?
I think you're talking earlier about which tracks can you work out to, and this is probably his best gym playlist track, if that's true. Tim, have you ever worked out to a bit of Fit But You Know It?
I think this has made its way onto a gym playlist.
Nice.
Before, for sure. It reminds me of being in greasy kebab shops after a night in a club, and I'm not disputing your Lolly Adefope's statement there, but you know, there has been very short skirts in greasy kebab shops when you're drunk, and can be. We should have just left. We should have all gone home long before we even got to the kebab shop. You know what I mean? That's what it reminds me of, and I still like it. It's the best on this playlist for me. And it's probably the only reason I've listened to any other Streets track ever.
It's also got the best videos as well. The video goes hand in hand.
I don't know as I remember the video.
Oh,
is that a
check it out.
YouTube job for me?
Circuit it. It's seriously, it'd be a time walk back to Ibiza Uncovered, of, you know,
oh god,
those girls you're talking about, short skirts, kebab shops, and desperate guys at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
But yeah, but apart from that, what is he thinking?
Right.
Exactly.
So what is he thinking? I just want to explain to you how I got into this song because it's totally random. So I went to the eastern Belgian city of Hasselt to see a gig, to see Tiger Cub and D-Mob Happy co-headline, which was great. And I stayed over the next day, and I was working for a cafe, like a sort of hippie cafe, like somewhere between hippie and hipster. And suddenly this song came on, and I'd never heard it before. And it was just quite atmospheric, and it was very surreal to be working in a cafe and then the Streets coming on. like this. So I think I like it because of where I was when I listened to it. I wasn't expecting it at all. This wasn't, someone said, Barbara, sit down and listen to this. Maybe if they'd done that, I wouldn't have liked it. But it just, it kind of hooked me from that point on. And yeah, again, very simple, very repetitive, but this is one of the ones I like.
Yeah, I think it is what situation you're in, and listening to these songs on my earphones, sat on my bed, I don't think it's a perfect location. And yeah, I listened to each song 3 times because I'm a good person.
Oh yeah.
But I think I zoned out, unfortunately, on this track. Tim, any thoughts?
I mean, no. Again, I wouldn't. It's not. Sorry.
You're allowed to have no thoughts.
It's one
it's
that
fine.
I had to go and check it out. It's one I'd not heard before. It's one that I was like, well, yeah, it's another Streets track, isn't it?
I think it'd be easier to say, is there any tracks, Tim, which you enjoyed on this playlist?
Yeah, there's a couple of Street tracks. Like I said at the beginning, Blinding Lights was one I couldn't wait to listen to. Dry Your Eyes were a bit of. It was funny that that it brought back that memory from GMTV. Fit But You Know It, like I said, Greasy Kebab Shops. But there was one more that stood out. Oh, Has It Come to This? I like those. I like those. So it's their early stuff. Yeah, I'm that guy, aren't I?
You're very welcome to the podcast if you're that guy, for sure.
And Babs, what else on the last 5 spoke to you?
So Puzzled by People, I did genuinely like. I've just discovered that song, that album, but it made me think of checking out that album further. I thought it was interesting that you were saying that you could shuffle the songs and they could be from any era. You're probably right. Like, I guess I've never listened to the Streets in any kind of chronological order, but Puzzled by People did intrigue me, and made me want to go and check out that album to see if it was any different. But yeah, I'm guessing it's probably not.
And The Escapist, I think the only fact I learnt was that he walked 770 miles for the music video.
What?
Yeah, so I might watch that video, and then we end with conspiracy theory.
So yeah, just to say, I didn't like The Escapist. That was, the only thing I liked, I guess, were the kind of pizzicato strings, and that's what I also enjoyed in What You See Thinking. I do like the strings, and I would like more strings, synthy or otherwise in Streets. I think it gives it a bit of texture. But yeah, Conspiracy Theory Freestyle, I picked it because it's got Rob Harvey from The Music, who I know was, in the touring band or like co-writing with him. And yeah, I felt nothing. I felt this was kind of vacuous pop. I thought Mike Skinner's voice was especially annoying.
I remember when Ride broke up and Andy Bell did Hurricane #1, and then when Oasis did the split and half the band left in 2001, Andy Bell joined Oasis, and rather than being on the guitar, he played bass. So for years I was watching Andy Bell play bass with Oasis thinking, you fucking prick, you're wasting your talent. And he's an amazing songwriter. And luckily now he's left and he's now back and Ride. And watching Rob with The Streets is the same thing. I love the music. I'm thinking, what the fuck are you doing? Please leave The Streets and get back and do the music, because they're an amazing band, underrated.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do an underrated the music, because I think we agree. So we need to find like a third person who hates them or something. But Rob Harvey does a lot of pop songwriting now. So he co-wrote Head and Heart with Joel Corey and MNEK, for example, and that is modern pop. So he's not just doing stuff with The Streets. He's working for a lot of other people as well. And I mean, I guess he can, right? Because the music was so big when they were so young, and clearly he's got skills, and that pays the bills. Hey, it rhymes. I'm sorry, but yeah, I really didn't like this at all.
And that's it. So wraps up. So I assume Tim's going to say, like myself, that The Streets are overrated.
I agree. Overrated. Yeah, if I have to be absolutely binary on this, I have to say that they're overrated. There's a little place in my 18-year-old heart for them, but yeah, overrated for sure. Yeah,
I feel the same. I feel that they're overrated, but I think it could be worse. It could be worse, and I think I guess he was fairly unique at the time, because he was big in this period where it was a little bit after sort of, Craig David and kind of, UK garage becoming big, but before rap became a more mainstream genre. So he does occupy a very specific place in time, and that's fine. Like, he's overrated, but I can't bring myself to care too much about it, to be honest.
strange that because I never read a band review for the Streets. They seem to be one of those bands that get across the board glowing reviews as well. So we are not. My views didn't match the music press, unfortunately. And I guess I just have to. I guess not working in music anymore means it's easy for me to ignore the Streets, and I will be from this podcast going forward. So, thank you for listening to our Birmingham episode with our guest. Tim, you've mentioned your podcast. Is there anything else you want to mention?
Get me on Instagram, I suppose. Tim Colledge Fitness, College with a D, COLLEDGE Fitness, and you'll see anything that I do there. So if I drop a podcast or whatever, have anything online that people in the UK can get hold of, then you'll see it on there.
And are you going to be making that indie fitness playlist available, Tim?
Oh, that's a great idea. An indie fitness playlist would be, speaking to people about their playlists that they train to would be a good shout.
Excellent.
Make it onto a podcast. I swear that I would spend an hour making a playlist and then go to the gym for 10 minutes and get a stitch and go, it's worth it. It's a good playlist.
I've had some complaints recently. I've had some complaints about my music recently. Not the tracks that I'm playing, but I'm doubling up on the odd song. And it's been a point of my group training programs have been renowned for playing good music. So I need to get back on that.
I'm glad to hear it.
I remember doing Pilates, and my Pilates teacher had Shuffle on and Fuck the Police by NWA came on halfway through. And I kept thinking, how long is she going to play this until she turns over? It didn't really work in the vibes, guys. But definitely we'll share any playlists, Tim, with our audience.
Yeah, and awesome. It sounds like your fitness classes are worth attending, because I have to say I use my exercise playlist to drown out any YouTube workouts that I do that are very sincere. I can't handle it, so I'd rather kind of put them on mute and put on my own music. So good music workouts sound much better.
Babs? Any final thoughts?
Yes, I do have final thoughts. I didn't mention the fact that we talked about Birmingham, and I went to the University of Warwick, which is in Coventry. So I went to Birmingham quite a bit as a student, and I went to a lot of gigs, and I went to quite a few indie nights, and also to eat a lot of Krispy Kremes at the Bullring. But I feel that I really didn't explore Birmingham as much as I could have. Every gig that I went to was really good, and I went to, I think, Britain's biggest indie night for one of my friends' birthdays. And now I have friends who live in Digbeth and stuff, and tell me that there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. So I would definitely be keen to go back to Birmingham. Haven't been there, I think, since since I left in 2008, and see how it is, because I'm sure there's a lot more going on than maybe when I was living near there. So keep it real, Birmingham.
Keep it real, Birmingham. And that's another episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed Birmingham, and let us know your thoughts. Don't be dicks, and stay safe.
Bye.
See you guys.
And you've made it. Thank you for getting this far. Thank you for listening. Let us know what you think by getting in touch with us on social media. It's Underrated Music Pod on Instagram and OU Music Pod on Twitter. So let us know of anyone you like on the show, or any bands you think are over or underrated. Thanks again. Remember to subscribe and share to some people you like, or if you hate this podcast, people you hate. Have a great time with your podcasts. Goodbye.